Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Dan Cotter, to the show today. Dan is an attorney and business advisor with a unique combination of in-house and private practice experience who is passionate about his clients' needs in four arenas: insurance, blockchain, big data, privacy, and cybersecurity since 1996, outside general counsel from cradle to grave, from formation to sale, and non-profs. His main focus over the last few years has been mergers and acquisitions related to cyber risk and cybersecurity and privacy. Thank you so much, Dan. I'm really excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Marilyn, for having me. I look forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us how you got started?
In law or in cyber or which?
Yeah, I think in cyber, to be obviously, lawyer, but in cyber, what got you into that?
So in 1996, I was practicing at a law firm, and there was a thing that was starting to really emerge called Y2K. And then I went in-house to a large insurance company. And the second day on my job, I went to my boss and said, "Hey, what are we doing about Y2K?" And so she called the IT department while I was in the office. And the next day they said, "We'll send somebody up." And they sent up a tech guy who was really working on the integration of a merger at that place. And she said, "You brought it up. You've been working a little bit in this. Why don't you do the Y2K?" And so that started me on like cyber and tech and privacy. That was 1996, and the EU Directive on Privacy was existing. The HIPAA had just come out, and Gramm-Leach-Bliley was percolating. And so we started doing it, and that was kind of the dawn of the internet, in terms of companies having websites. And so we just started doing a lot of tech and a lot of cyber. And given I was at an insurance company, we were starting to think about those things before 9/11. And then, of course, 9/11 came and kind of derailed cyber insurance, at least for a bit. But the hackers were warming up and getting ready to do the barrage that they've now daily do.
Well, that is true. That is true. So thinking about the cyber, what do you do for your clients? You said you work for a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses. What do you do for your clients?
A couple of things in the cyber and privacy space. One is reactive. So if they've had breaches, they've had their websites mimicked, some takedowns, they have issues that are percolating, we react to those types of things and help them try to figure out how to navigate those kind of calamities and risk. But more of my work is done on the proactive side. I like to sit down with all of my clients. Some come to me just for the cyber and privacy kind of piece, but to take an inventory of what they're doing, what information they're collecting, and then what their internet presence is, and making sure that they're compliant with all these existing and the increased number of state regulations, the talk of federal. So I kind of track that stuff and kind of advise them on being proactive in terms of making sure that their employees, their workers, the third parties are in compliance. In the transactional space, we do a lot of work to make sure that our clients have addressed the cyber risk and cyber things if they're buyers or sellers, to make sure that the transaction, nothing is going to come up. And then finally, what I do with them is, again, I spent 16 years in-house at insurance companies, and so we bring that to bear in terms of their cyber and risk management needs to make sure that they've thought about cyber insurance and their other insurance packages for when they're attacked. It's not a matter of if, but when. And so we kind of try to do all those things. And most of our work, again, is proactive. We do reactive and address hacks and breaches and ransomware demands. But we're not a law firm that's listed on any policies per se. And so that work is kind of hard to come by, except for the smaller cyber insurance, people that carry smaller amounts or don't have anybody designated.
Now, so do you have a way? So you say you're reactive. As far as a proactive side, do you have like with clients? Is there something that you can put on their website server or their hosting to keep that from happening, or detect it if it's attempting to happen to rob the hack their website or take their website?
Yeah, I mean, there are things that you can put online to make sure that things don't happen. And again, we don't provide the tech solutions to the clients, but we do have a lot of conversations about them. We hook them up with partners that can provide those services. There's a lot of companies and providers out there that will provide different types of alert systems, so that if somebody's trying to hit their URL repeatedly, password hacks, things of that nature, we can advise them on that. The reality though is one of the things that I read years ago, and it had to do with the privacy policy and how people were treating things. I forget the company, but it was a tech company, and they had 60,000 employees at the time. So this is back in the 1990s, early 2000s. There's so many companies that have 60,000 employees anymore. But and what the chief information officer said there was that they had 60,000 kind of approaches and policies and procedures, because each person kind of live their own existence, right? And they have their own reactions, they have their own knowledge level. So one of the best things that I think we can do on the proactive side for people is to, again, instill in them that testing their employee base is a good idea. And those can be pretty simple tests. And I'll give you an example. At my prior law firm, we were given tests every so often that looked legit. It was U.S. Postal Service, whatever. Hit this link. And the CEO would report on how good or bad the reactions were of the 200-something employees throughout the country. And I remember a recent test there, one of the more recent tests they did, like a 90% pass rate. And the CEO said that's not acceptable. If this continues, we're going to have to start taking some remedial actions against people that, are hitting these links and stuff. And these are a safe environment right there. And so, again, the best thing that we can do is to make sure that our clients are actually testing, training their employees to be on the lookout. And the hackers have gotten better and better. They're just like anybody else. They refine themselves. And so one of the things that's really prevalent these days is text messages or emails that look legit. Your PayPal's been charged $700 for a computer. This is Chase. It's a fraud thing. One of the things we always advise everybody is don't hit the links in there. Don't phone the phone number that's in that text message, because they spoof these companies very well. And what they're asking for is information. And once they have your information, the game is over, right? If they have your bank account, your online access ID, your password, any of those things, social security number, they can then call, email, and take all the money that you have in whatever account it is.
That is true. One of the things that we do is, we do marketing for law firms and service-based businesses. Anyone that starts running Facebook ads specifically or Instagram, we immediately, day one that the ads get launched, we start getting these, your copyright violation, we're canceling your page, and clients panic. We try to preset the stage, right? Don't click on anything, don't respond. It's coming as links or as comments on the ads, as private messenger messages. And I'm actually getting the emails to email addresses that do not have Facebook account. So that's the big, kicker. Obviously that's going to be a scam, but it's difficult to get people to realize don't click on things. And I do periodically get invoices from companies I've never heard of saying I just bought a $2,000 computer, and I'm like, really?
Yeah. I hope it's a good computer, right? Because I'm not paying for it. So it's
Exactly.
and then sometimes, I recently on one of my credit cards, I got a message, and I thought maybe my son had bought something online, because he's got a card attached to it from when he was in college. So I said, "Hey, have you bought shoes? Because it looked like something legit, And he came back and said no, and I called them up, and again, in this case, someone must have, again, copied or spoofed. A lot of times now on these phones, right, we have the virtual cards, because it said that the person presented the card, and it's impossible, because I had the card in my wallet. I looked, because my wife's like, oh, did you miss your card? Did you lose it somewhere? And I said, no, it's right here. I've got the card, physical card, all the information. So I have no idea what was going on. It was in Portland, Oregon. It was in store. And so again, it's really, like you said, it's just something, and it's hard sometimes because we're all busy, we're moving fast. One of the scams that's going on in our neck of the woods is the Illinois Tollway that you have online for the easy passes when you go through tolls in Chicago area. And my brother
Mhm.
fell for one of these scams where it said, you need to replenish $12 on your card and hit this link. Well, that was a scam. The Illinois Tollway has warnings on its website. But again, when you're moving fast, you're thinking fast, employees, personal, it's very easy to trip up. But the other thing I tell people, and I serve as an arbitrator as well, and a lot of these cases come up now with wire transfer cases, is when you do get these things, if you do call the wrong number, never give out your account number, never give out your password. Again, make sure that you're calling and talking to somebody that's actually the legitimate vendor. Like you said, there's a lot of people on Facebook and stuff. No matter what you do, if you post, I'm in a group, the National Conference of Bar Presidents, and every time we have turnover, new leadership every August, right? It happens every August at our annual meeting. We start getting these emails.
Yeah.
Hey, I need cash fast. It's to the treasurer. It's to the new president. Dan Cotter has asked that you immediately, transfer $1,000 from our account. And so somebody's out there. They're pretty genius, right? Because somebody's tracking and trolling and just hoping that one person over the 20 years this has been going on, whatever it is, that one person actually falls for it. And now all of a sudden, you've got a big loss on your hands.
Yes, exactly. Same thing happens when people travel, regular travelers on Facebook. Then, they get their account spoofed and all of their friends get an email. I'm stuck and I've lost my passport. I need money. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But so thinking about these issues, obviously those are individual things and business things getting those emails. It is distressing when you get an email or a message on your Facebook and you've just started advertising, whether you're doing it yourself or with an agency. It's scary, to get something like that. Is there a specific industry that seems to be more targeted right now? I mean, I know law firms obviously collect, personal data, financial data, so do financial analysts. So, is something specifically targeted we need to be more careful of?
So there's three or four that always hit the top. The number one's usually healthcare. Reason for that is when you think about health information, prescriptions, data, genetics, that information's not changeable, right? You can't easily change that you've got prescriptions or other HSA accounts. So healthcare tends to be number one. The second is financial institutions, whether it's banks or insurance companies. And if you've been paying attention, the biggest ransomware to date was CNA Financial. They paid over $40 million. And one of the reasons that a lot of these hackers go after the banks and financial institutions and do this is they get a twofer. They can do ransomware on the financial institution or the insurance company, number one, so they get money from there. But in the meantime, before they announce that they're in there and asking for ransomware, they've got all the data of all the customers. And again, they're big collectors, financial institutions. The third is professional service firms, like you're talking about. Anybody that sells a service, attorneys are big targets of this. And twofolds for attorneys. One is in the real estate market. Most states like Illinois don't allow wire transfers anymore. And so there's checks and there's money moving, or the checks, they require wire transfers now. And so people know they can see and go online for when a house is for sale, and they move the money, they divert it to a different account. And then another thing that happens a lot with attorneys and other professional service firms is you get these emails that look legit. Hey, I need legal services for equipment, contracts in your location. And then what they do is they give a check and then drain the bank account again. So those are the top three. Educational institutions are another area. And again, it's because there's a lot of information there, financial aid, Social Security numbers, all kinds of other stuff that then goes on the dark web and could be sold and purchased and then hacked.
Okay. So then how would a law firm, I guess it's a twofold question. What advice would you give law firms to protect their client data? And then what can they do to identify any compliance gap?
So on the first piece, again, it's really having a good what they call cyber hygiene. having multi-factor authentication, having limited data available on any portal that's subject to the public, right? We shouldn't have all of our confidential and privileged documents out there so that people can log on and see those things. So it should be compartmentalized. They should make sure that they're given limited access to only those people that need to see the data and those things. In terms of gaps, again, they should have some professional taking a look, whether it's a forensics company, lawyers, or other IT professionals in the cyberspace to kind of do an assessment, like I was talking about earlier, an inventory of what data they're collecting, how they're storing it, what kind of password protocols and controls they have in place. And then the other thing that I recommend to almost everybody is that you should be taking snapshots of the system as often as possible. At one of the firms I worked at several years ago, they took an hourly snapshot. And it can get expensive because of storage and because of the process. But the good news is that if they were subject to ransomware, and they were once, somebody went to a site that's known as a watering hole and kind of got us into a mix. The nice thing, though, is that they were able to tell the ransomware bad actors that they weren't going to pay because they could restore from an hour ago, right? So there was minimal loss of data.
Wow.
So those are the types of things that can be done. And again, it's really having good policies and procedures in place to be, like I said, it's referred to, if you look it up online, there's more and more talk about the cyber hygiene, kind of a robust plan of record retention and destruction, of access, of what goes online and what's stored, of how you clean up your system so you don't have, drafts and all kinds of other stuff existing.
Do you ever feel like the end of the year is racing towards you and you're not quite where you want to be revenue-wise? With only a few months left, the pressure to make significant strides can be overwhelming. I get it. Balancing growth, managing a team, and chasing those big goals can leave you feeling stuck or unsure. It's a common struggle and you don't have to navigate it alone. That's why I'm offering a free strategy call. Together we'll identify the specific hurdles you're facing and develop a personalized marketing plan to drive real results. This is your opportunity to turn those challenges into achievements and set yourself up for a powerful year end. Picture this. December arrives and you look back on a year where you achieved more than you thought possible. How would that make you feel? This call is your chance to make that vision a reality. Don't let another day pass by without taking action. Nothing changes until you change it. Are you ready to see what's possible? Click the link in the show notes to book your free discovery call with me now. Let's work together to make these last few months your most impactful yet. Let's seize this opportunity and finish the year strong. I'm here to help you make it happen.
Okay. And so that's great advice. Thank you for that. Thinking about, and of course, cybersecurity is huge in the news right now after that 3 billion leak, on a personal level, if so, a firm, absolutely. But as an individual, what is your response to that? Because I've seen both sides of it. Okay, out of 3 billion, what are the odds they're going to pick me? And then other people like, oh my God, the sky is falling. So where would you fall within that?
I mean, I think it's an issue of concern, but I think that's one of the things that I just had this conversation the other day with some cyber folks. They're on the kind of remediation and kind of proactive side as well, more in the tech space. That the reality is we trade off things, right? We all have these things that are computers and the convenience, and there's a big trade-off, but the reality is that with 3 billion records and maybe every social security number, again, these hackers, they're going to have this information for a long period of time, whoever's got the information. And just like any other group that has a lot of data, they'll have experts that will analyze it. They'll start cutting and dicing and looking at different people's profiles, and they'll see where the most harm is, right? It's just like back in the old days when there were bank robbers that were looking at banks to hit, and still as today, right? They some of them aren't as organized, but the organized ones, like in The Dog Day Afternoon, the movie with Al Pacino, right? They look at a bank that has a high activity, has a high amount of cash, It's going to be the same thing, I think, with these bad actors. Is they've got all this data. They're going to have different values for different people. They're going to figure out what different profiles look like, and with the Social Security number, they can probably go out and find out different information. So what I tell, again, what you should be thinking about is if you're concerned about that, if you have bank accounts, if you have other accounts that have your Social Security number, you should consider changing your passwords and coming up with stronger passwords and different ones for each website that you use. So again, you can minimize the profile and risk that you have because again, like you said, that was an astounding revelation last week or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks now. The magnitude of that hack is just mind blowing. And yeah.
It is. Yeah. I mean, we have 350 million people in the U.S., but they got 3 billion Social Security numbers. I mean, I see the thing about how would that be me, but yeah, so that's interesting. And I just had another question a minute ago. Oh, freezing your credit. So thinking about that was another thing that I've seen advised, because some people say that there's certain parts of this individual. So say your address has changed multiple times over the last, say, 15 years. You'd be more apt to be targeted because obviously you move around, you probably won't know that.
Yep.
And freezing your, like going to each credit reporting agency and freezing your credit, pain in the ass to uncover, but was suggested as something to do. What was your thought on
I
that?
think that can be a good method. Oh, the other thing you can do though is that different services provide these notices and tied to the credit bureaus. Through my work, I don't know what I pay, but it's a very small amount, and I think it's Allstate that provides me with ID protection. So every time there's a new hit or a new inquiry change in any of the accounts that I have, even if it's a deposit or something else of a certain magnitude, I get a text and an email saying, hey, one of your accounts has new activity on it. And so I can go in there, I can see a list very quickly of what's going on and make a determination of whether that's me or not. And so I think those are in some ways better ways. I think freezing the credit works for some people, but for a lot of people, the reality is they need kind of that cushion of credit they have. And so freezing your credit might not be the best way to go about it for many people that have to live and exist. But again, there's these various services that will come out and message you anytime there's something significant. And again, you can take a look, you can log on. Again, you don't hit the link in there. I always go and log on separately on my laptop and then see again, and 99% of the time it's stuff that I authorized or I know about. But if there's something that looks suspicious, then that triggers me to be able to call that vendor and say, what in the heck's going on here? Like you said, the $2,000 laptop, if God forbid it actually gets on some account. So, right? Yeah.
Right. And the other thing that a lot of people that I know of that are doing business online are using two-factor authentication more and more, obviously, and a lot of websites are requiring it. I was able to go one step further about 2.5, 3 years ago and actually got a little key that is connected to my fingerprint. So literally at my computer or wherever I travel, and it works on my phone as well, you have to have my fingerprint to get into some of my accounts. That's like one step beyond two-factor authentication. Is that type of security a good step?
I think it is, and I don't think it costs very much. And in fact, I got a replacement laptop at my current firm, and on my initial one, we set up the fingerprint for a form of ID, and I think it's very effective because while there's stories and one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is biometric information, and Illinois is one of the areas where we have legislation that until recently was very good for plaintiffs who were seeking to recover for people that were using it. But the fingerprint's very good because again, unlike the James Bond movies where someone cuts off a finger and then uses it to get into the vault, your fingerprint is something that you have that again, people would have a very hard time to replicate. And so I think steps like that are excellent ways to, again, prevent some of this because if like you said, if you don't sign in with your fingerprint, it will log you out, or at some point it'll block you saying you've been too many attempts, right, with the wrong fingerprint. So those are excellent ways, I think, because let's face it, passwords, unless you're using those super long ones, the suggested strong passwords, which then you have to put them somewhere because who can remember a 26-digit gibberish And then,
Especially when it's all
right,
symbols. Yeah, you're
right,
never going to
right.
remember that.
But the risk is you have to put them somewhere in one of these envelopes or wallets, and sometimes those wallets get hacked. And so, again, the fingerprint, something that is something you carry with you that can't be replicated. And so I really like those types of things that consider things that only you can do. Like I said, the key as well. Sometimes there's like RSA and other keys. They can be kind of expensive sometimes, so people are like, well, that's not a meaningful response. But again, some banks offer those for high net worth individuals and others. I think all those tools that require something to be physically present with you, that only you would have, is a better method than just a password protection, some kind of code on your phone that gets you back in. So, because once people are in, again, if they can break it, then they've got access to everything.
Right. And the key, I bought 2 of them, so I have a backup, but both of my laptops use the fingerprint to log in, but the USB key is what was super important. And it was like $25 on Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for the cost of the peace of mind, and it takes maybe 5 minutes to set it up on each of your banks and on your Facebook and anywhere you're doing business. So absolutely. Well, this has been really eye-opening. I really appreciate your time. What's the biggest takeaway that you hope our listeners learn?
Again, be super vigilant and have a skeptical mind when you see these things that come in that you don't expect, or even if you do expect them. Always go to your statements or to your back of your card, whether it's a debit card or credit card. Call that phone number if you're in doubt, because again, these actors are more and more sophisticated. They have the money to invest. Where's the money coming from to invest? It's the ransomwares that they're getting, the $80,000, the $30,000, the selling in the dark web, whatever data they've collected. And so they have resources. It's not like these are just people in someone's basement hacking away. These are sophisticated, and in many cases, they're state actors, and which means that there are other nations that are really behind these things. So they're very sophisticated, very smart people doing it. So be ever vigilant, and when in doubt, don't hit the click, don't call the number that you see, but go external and check verify your numbers.
Very good. Very good. That's great advice. Absolutely. Never click a link in those emails. And most of the time, if you look at it, the link is not even to the source. I mean, they're not even hiding the link unless they change and buy a domain with a Cyrillic letter in it. But yeah, don't even delete those quickly. Absolutely. Great advice. Thank you so much, Dan. I know my listeners are probably may want to reach out to you or connect with you in some way. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about
Sure.
you?
I'm on LinkedIn, so you can look me up I think it's /Dan Cotter, and I post frequently on cyber and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm at dcotter at Dickinson-Wright, WRIGHT.com. You can send me an email there, and always happy to chat with folks and even answer questions. So, and unlike some lawyers or, the mystique, we're willing to have those initial consultations and no charge, no fees, but to walk you through issues you may be facing.
Fantastic. Awesome. I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes as well. Dan, thank you so much. This has been great. I really appreciate the information, the advice, and hearing where you started and all the stuff about cybersecurity. It's something we all need to take very, very seriously. And testing our employees, I think, is a great idea as well.
I appreciate it, Marilyn. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Leadership in Law Podcast. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of law firm owners out there facing similar challenges and striving for the same success. head over to our website at lawmarketingzone.com. From there, connect with other listeners, access valuable resources, and stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep leading with vision and keep growing your firm.